Hey, welcome back everyone. This is Uncle Frank, and I am not a financial advisor, nor is any of the content to be construed as financial advice. This channel is for entertainment purposes only. Hashtag box office. All right, it looks like we're kicking off the fourth quarter with a flop. From the LA Times, Joker 2 flops at the box office with brutal audience reviews. New York Times, Joker sequel falls far short of original at the box office. Forbes, D spells disaster. Audiences heckle Joker 2 off box office stage. And from Slate, Joker 2 is so bad, it's almost laughable. All right, maybe Gladiator 2 will fare a little better. See you there on November 22nd. Hashtag BRICS from Watcher Guru. U.S. banks face $500 billion in losses as de-dollarization grows. While the BRICS alliance is strengthening its banking system, the U.S. seems to be on a downhill. In the last 3 years alone, 15 U.S. banks collapsed, renewing fears of financial instability across the country. The BRICS bloc has pushed de-dollarization efforts, especially since it expanded its numbers. Now the pressure is mounting on the U.S. dollar as the country's banks face over $500 billion in unrealized losses. A finance expert at Florida Atlantic University revealed that the U.S.'s unrealized losses on investment securities are over $500 billion as of the end of Q2 2024. This is a slight downtrend from the first quarter of the year, a decrease to $513 billion from $516. However, it's still a significant loss for one of the strongest economies in the world. Banks are now straddled with more than $500 billion on their balance sheets. The development shows that the U.S. banks are at risk, while the central banks of BRICS are massively accumulating gold to hedge against the U.S. dollar. Hashtag BRICS again, this time from the Jerusalem Post. BRICS is considering a new currency. Here's what you need to know. Precious metals investors will pay close attention to the upcoming 16th rendition of the annual BRICS Summit scheduled for October 22nd to 24th in Kazan, Russia. Rumors have swirled around the potential unveiling of a BRICS economic alliance currency, thought to be called the unit, that will put further pressure on the U.S. dollar amid rising de-dollarization efforts from countries looking to increase economic sovereignty. The chart on your screen depicts that China's share of world trade has tripled over 2 decades. That's what happens when you make a sworn enemy, a communist country, your most favored trading partner. After America moved away from the gold standard under Nixon in the 70s, the U.S. convinced Middle Eastern countries to commit to trading oil in dollars. While the currency lost its physical asset-backed protection, the use of the currency in oil trading, which is a highly global market, helped solidify the dollar's status as the strongest currency in the world. That is until 6 years ago, when China unveiled the petro-yuan and began making oil purchases in Chinese yuan. China's share of world trade has tripled since the turn of the century, and payments made in yuan are becoming more popular. While the yuan has become the third most used currency at SWIFT, the global payment network, it still only accounts for just 5.3% of global trade, compared to 5.9% in euros and 84% in dollars. Rising tensions in 2022 that began with Russia's invasion of Ukraine and now rapidly heightened tensions in the Middle East have led to further pressure on the dollar. The month after Russia's invasion, Chinese President Xi Jinping visited Saudi Arabia to discuss pricing some of the kingdom's oil sales in yuan, and at the end of the year, Jinping announced China will continue to buy large amounts of oil from the Saudis and will use the yuan in trade. At the same time, Russia and its allies have been forced to move away from the U.S. dollar thanks to sanctions enacted by the West, and in turn, rumors about a BRICS-based currency have begun to swirl. Reports have since suggested the potential new BRICS currency will be 40% backed by gold and 60% backed by reserves in member currencies. Meanwhile, reserve banks across the globe have added large amounts of gold to their coffers in recent years, further fueling speculation of a new gold-backed currency. Gold prices have risen exponentially in 2024 and is currently trading at about $26.50 an ounce. While most experts don't expect the new currency to be fully unveiled during this month's BRICS Alliance Summit, they expect major headway in planning and discussions. It's clear the world's efforts to dethrone the dollar are ramping up, and precious metals markets are unquestionably on the front lines of that war. Hashtag gold from Newsweek Sunday morning. Gold could reach $3,000 by the end of 2024 or sooner, after several months of rising prices. Goldprice.org says that there has been a 45.93% increase in the price of an ounce over the past year, with a 6.58% increase in the last 30 days. As of October 3rd, the price is $26.42, and experts believe it will climb to a record $3,000 before the end of 2024. My only warning here to the bugs out there, be watching for pullbacks every time doubt is cast on future rate cuts. But other than that, march on to 3,000, bugs. You deserve it. Hashtag silver from FX Empire Sunday morning. Silver price forecast is next surge on the horizon. Gold and silver have been consolidating in Q3 2024, setting up for a strong rally in Q4 of 24. Growing industrial demand, central bank policies, and supply constraints support silver prices in Q4. The gold to silver ratio has turned lower from long-term resistance, fueling silver prices. A word of caution for my silver bugs out there. Uncle Frank believes silver is the most feared and manipulated commodity on the face of the planet, and I'd have to do 10 videos to cover all the theories out there. Again, be mindful of headlines about delaying future rate cuts, and according to the article on your screen, the silver market is experiencing significant manipulation due to its dual role as both an industrial metal and an investment commodity, according to Keith Neumeyer, CEO of First Majestic Silver. Market manipulation remains rampant and is driven by trading desks at major banks that treat silver as just another number on a screen, often ignoring its fundamental value and significance. The silver market has been in a structural deficit for 4 consecutive years. Fact, with the current deficit standing at 240 million ounces, according to the Silver Institute. This shortfall is substantial given that the global mining sector only produces around 850 million ounces annually. The Silver Institute reported that despite a 30% decrease in the deficit last year, it still remains substantial at 184.3 million ounces. Neumeyer projects for these deficits to continue, driven by increasing industrial consumption. Quote, "We've been in a 4-year deficit now, and these deficits are growing. We're talking about a 240 million ounce silver deficit, and that number climbs every year," said Neumeyer. So as far as Uncle Frank is concerned, I hope you guys get a squeeze and a new all-time high of at least 50. That would beat the 49.45 per troy ounce hit in January of 1980 when the Hunt brothers tried to corner the market. Not investment advice or advisor, but I think it should be at 50 already based on gold's price alone. And like AMC, I think you'll only see a squeeze when they simply can't afford to hold it down or control it anymore. Then my number, 155. Try to remember, this shit happens every year. JP Morgan metals traders jailed over market manipulation scheme. 2 former precious metals traders at JP Morgan Chase have been sentenced to prison for engaging in fraud, attempted price manipulation, and spoofing as part of a market manipulation scheme that spanned over 8 years, involved tens of thousands of unlawful trading sequences, and resulted in over $10 million in losses to market participants. And JP Morgan is still allowed to trade. Seems fair. And on topic, a moment of silence for Mr. Herbert Hunt, billionaire who tried to corner the silver market, died at 95 on April 9th of this year. After losing billions of dollars in a commodities trading scandal, Hunt went through personal bankruptcy before making it back in oil, gas, and real estate. Okay, hashtag oil. Remember, Uncle Frank thinks the Israeli response isn't if, but when. Oil prices could surge 161% if Middle East conflict wipes out Iran's energy infrastructure. Oil prices could surge past $200 a barrel if Iran's oil installations are taken offline, a chief commodities expert said. Iran accounts for over 2 million barrels of crude exports per day. Traders are hedging against the risk of oil disruption as the Middle East tensions heat up. I bet we'll wish we were still energy independent like under Trump if something like this happens. Look, guys, I'm not rooting for $200 oil, but you have to admit, we are asking for it out there. This is from the past 24 hours. Ukraine takes control of huge Black Sea oil and gas rigs in devastating blow to Putin. Sunday morning, Iran's oil minister visits key oil facility as possible Israeli airstrikes loom. Hashtag Ripple XRP, legal expert Jeremy Hogan says SEC's move to appeal ruling in lawsuit against Ripple, a big mistake. Here's why. In October of 2023, a judge ruled that only the sales of XRP at the institutional level qualify as sales of securities, leaving retail sales in the clear. But last week, the SEC announced that it was going to appeal the decision, which prompted Ripple Chief Legal Counsel Stuart Alderodi to proclaim that the SEC is just prolonging its years-long war on the crypto asset industry. In a thread on the social media platform X, attorney Jeremy Hogan said the SEC's move to appeal the decision is a big blunder from a risk-reward standpoint. Quote, big mistake by the SEC. It will appeal the programmatic sales ruling, and if it wins, it will get more money from Ripple and have protected no one. Ripple will raise its blue sky law issue, and if it wins, the SEC's ability to regulate the entire crypto space is essentially destroyed. Not a good calculation of risk by the SEC. It would make a poor stock trader. Blue sky laws are intended to protect the general public against fraudulent sales of securities by having firms register their offerings unless exemptions are available. Hogan goes on to say that the odds are not in favor of the SEC. Quote, the SEC is very, very likely to lose, both statistically and based on the fact-heavy way the judge wrote her opinion. Even if the SEC were to win on appeal, it's very, very likely just a matter of money. Nothing would change as to XRP and its use by Ripple. Hashtag spoofing, hashtag DOJ, hashtag Donahue George. Banking giant paying $4.7 million to victims of billion-dollar market manipulation scheme, according to the U.S. Department of Justice. A group of U.S. regulators, including the DOJ, is hitting a banking giant with a multi-million-dollar fine to settle criminal charges that the firm defrauded the Treasury market. The DOJ says TD Bank's registered broker-dealer, TD Securities, has accepted the terms of a deferred prosecution agreement that charges the firm with one count of wire fraud for rigging the market. Prosecutors allege Jayakumar Nataraja, who worked at the firm's U.S. Treasury's trading desk, placed tens of billions of dollars in fraudulent orders in a spoofing manipulation scheme between April of 2018 and May of 2019. Spoofing is an illegal trading practice that involves the placement of orders that are intended to be canceled to create a false perception of demand or supply. The DOJ says Nataraja, who is facing individual criminal charges, used the technique to drive the prices of bonds in the secondary market to desired levels before executing actual trades. Hey, DOJ, the shit I trade gets spoofed every day and every hour. Why don't you peek into the trading of AMC, GME, Archer? You'll find lots of spoofing by Goldman, Virtu, and Citadel if you care to look. Hashtag election, billionaire hedge fund manager John Paulson predicts a market crash if Harris wins. Just imagine what Kamala and Gary are going to do to crypto. Hashtag the market. Okay, guys, let's get ready for the bell. S&P's $8 trillion rally will be tested by tricky earnings season. Earnings estimates for 3Q are declining. Traders are staring down a series of risks after the stock market's torrid start to the year, from economic fear to interest rate uncertainty to election angst. But perhaps the most important variable for whether equities can keep rolling returns to the spotlight this week: corporate earnings. Hashtag earnings. They're not kidding, guys. On Friday, the 11th, JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, BlackRock, and Bank of New York Mellon all report. Heads up. Now, guys, try to remember why I do these event calendars. You can get this information anywhere, but I plot things out like this because a lot of my subscribers are still trapped in AMC, and I concluded months ago, with Adam Aaron coordinating with Wall Street and the regulators determined to protect Wall Street, the only way out may be a black or white swan event, something unexpected that adversely impacts our enemies so they can't afford to do what they do anymore, something that attacks the leverage chain of the bad actors who are leveraged 60 to 1 or even higher, something that turns the prime brokers against their prime customers, the predatory short hedge funds. For example, what if Israel attacks Iran on the 10th when we get CPI and we get a hot reading on inflation? We could see the start of another 2008-style crisis. You never know. For those of you that weren't there, nearly 700 hedge funds, 7% of the entire industry shut down in the first 3 quarters of 2008. I was there, and I feel we are in a more precarious situation now than we were then. So what's next? The port strike is out of the way, but when will Israel attack Iran, and will that drag other nations like the U.S. into the mix? What will that do to oil prices and inflation data? We have to be ready for anything. If war breaks out in the Middle East, China could take advantage and attack Taiwan. Is the Biden administration going to let Ukraine hit targets deep within Russia? What do you think Putin is going to do in response? They just seized one of his oil platforms. I do these calendars so you know what's going on and what's ahead if a swan finally lands. At the time of this recording, there is no Fed meeting scheduled for October, so we may have to wait until November for the next rate decision, and it currently looks like we ain't getting another cut in November. The first thing I want you to know about this week is we have a Fed Reserve member scheduled to speak every damn day. 16 presentations altogether. Wednesday, October 9th, 2 p.m., we'll get the minutes of the Fed's September FOMC meeting. Thursday, 8:30 a.m., initial jobless claims, but more important, CPI. Then on Friday, 10/11, producer price index and consumer sentiment. Fast forward to Monday, October 14th, Columbus Day holiday. The U.S. bond market will be closed, but the stock market will be open for business. October 15th and 16th is Ripple's Swell Conference in Miami. October 22nd to the 24th is the BRICS Summit in Russia. Did you notice the Ripple Conference is exactly 1 week before the BRICS conference. And now that XRP has been deemed not a security, they may release some explosive developments ahead of BRICS. And now we know the SEC has filed an appeal, but we also know they could lose everything and gain very little out of this latest delay of XRP. Understand, we could get some earth-shattering and market-roiling headlines out of the BRICS summit. And right before the election, this could profoundly affect crypto, precious metals, and the U.S. bond and stock markets, not to mention the U.S. dollar. Thursday, October 17th, 8:30 a.m., we'll get initial jobless claims again, and then U.S. retail sales. I expect Bill Wang of Archegos to be sentenced on Monday, October 20th. You think that's got nothing to do with you? Then tell me why they delayed the Andrew Leff trial until September 30th of next year. Do you really think they want all that dirty hedge fund shit coming out right before the election? Or maybe Andrew Leff finally realized he could die in jail like Bernie Madoff, and he better start singing like Ariana Grande. And yes, November and December already look like a haunted house for stocks, bonds, oil, precious metals, and crypto. In November, I expect 3Q earnings releases from AMC, Archer, and Joby, and the November 5th election is now only 31 days away. We won't have an October FOMC meeting, so the meetings scheduled for the days immediately following the election, the 6th and 7th, are already getting amped up. Guys, on a side note, do you really think our enemies aren't planning some interesting shit for us? Do you think they don't know when our events are scheduled and that our pants are down? Think about it. Not to mention, the Democrats we have in power now are not the Democrats from 25 years ago. Do you really think they're going to give up power without a fight? Expect a shit show. That's all I'm going to say. I don't want to trigger any of you out there who think Kamala is a logical choice to lead our nation. What if Biden resigns in October and swears in Kamala so she can run as an incumbent? I bet Hunter Biden gets pardoned then. He's expected to be sentenced on November 13th. I also believe the immediate future of crypto could swing on this election. Trump has promised to dump Gensler on day one in office, but that's not until January 20th of 2025. That's 107 days away. What is Darth Gensler capable of until he's thrown out into the street, or worse, what will he do if Kamala wins? GameStop's next earnings date is unconfirmed for December, but typically happens after market hours. The big question is, will Ryan Cohen drop his future plans for the company before or after the election? My guess is after, which would make the fourth quarter earnings call for GME, in a word, explosive. By the way, December 17th and 18th will be the last FOMC meeting of the year, and that very same week, Friday the 20th, will be this year's last quadruple witching day. Even that week has the potential to blow a hole in your 401k. So buckle up, buttercups. You wanted to see some action? I say it's finally coming. Hey, I want to thank you for watching, and please remember to hit the like button after this slide if you enjoyed the presentation. Subscribe to the channel and set the alert so you're notified when I have new information to share. See you at the bell.